I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. We're all up technology-wise.
Chairman, we're ready to go.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the June 5th Sandag Transportation Committee meeting. It's been a while since we've had a meeting. Great to have everyone back. We're going to start the meeting this morning with the Pledge of Allegiance. So I guess we've got a flag to show on the screen. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. So before we jump in here, I want to make sure we have a quorum, Tessa?
Thank you, Chair. We do have a quorum.
Okay. And let me see. Just want to remind everybody, they have to raise their hand if you want to speak. And, just lost my screen. All right, hold on. I just lost all of the speaker. Here we go. All right, so raise your hand if you have a question and make noise or whatever if I don't see your hand. So you click the little raise hand icon at the top of the screen. And if there's no other questions or comments, we'll move on to item 1, which is the approval of the meeting minutes. Do we have any public comments on this item, Tessa?
We do not have public comments on this item.
Is there a motion or a hand going up?
Mr. Chair, would you accept a motion to approve the minutes? This is Sankey.
All right. Motion by Sankey.
Second by Edson.
Second by Edson. All right. We have a motion, a second. And if there's no other discussion, I don't see any hands raised. I guess have a roll call, please.
Thank you, Chair. On item number 1, Mayor Paul McNamara, North County Inland. I believe his audio is still not working. South County Vice Chair Bill Sankey. Let me do this.
Aye.
Let me back up. Airport Authority, Joanna Schiavone.
I'm not sure if you caught that. Schiavone,
Yes.
aye.
Thank you. City of San Diego, Councilmember Monica Montgomery.
Yes.
County of San Diego, Chair Jim Desmond.
Aye.
East County, Councilmember Jennifer Mendoza.
Aye.
MTS, Mayor Alejandro Sotelo Solis. I believe MTS is absent. North County Coastal, Mayor Jewel Edson.
Aye.
North County Inland, Mayor Paul McNamara. Again, he does not have audio. North County Transit, Deputy Mayor Jack Feller.
Yes.
San Diego Port District, Commissioner Gary Benelli.
Benelli, yes.
Thank you. That item passes with 2 member agencies absent.
Okay, thank you very much. Looks like it passes unanimously. All right, thank you, Tessa. Okay, now I'll ask the clerk if there's any public comments to be read into the record. Did we receive any e-comments or?
We do not have any general public comments, Chair.
Okay, so we're going to move on to this, in item 2 then. Is there any board members or committee members that have any comments they would like to submit? Raise your hand.
I do. This is Jennifer Mendoza. I'm sorry, I can't find where to raise my hand, but
It's in the upper, okay.
okay. Council member Baber asked me to let everyone know that he's very busy dealing with the cleanup in La Mesa, and he wanted to thank the county and every city that has sent law enforcement to aid La Mesa. I just want to say I was over there early Sunday morning to help with the cleanup, and it is quite devastating. And my heart goes out to our neighbors to the north of Lemon Grove. So I know the council members there and the mayor are just you know, they're overwhelmed with what's happening. So that's my comment.
Well, thank you for those comments, and our you know, hearts and prayers and thoughts all go for La Mesa, and hopefully they get a quick recovery. And you know, the peaceful assemblies are great and lawful, and it's when it comes to destruction that we have the negative impacts and that are not beneficial to the community. You know, I have to agree with Jennifer. I don't see where the little hand raising. We used to have a little hand.
Chair,
There's a lot of feedback.
Chair, this is
Are
James
you
from Sandag. All your panel members are panelists that they can unmute, mute themselves, and turn on their own cameras.
So there's no hand raising.
Correct. Yes,
correct?
sir. There is no hand raising for your board members, your committee members. If they want to make a comment, make a motion, or speak, have a question, they can come on camera, and then you can recognize them, and then they'll speak at that time.
Okay, so thank you very much. I guess I was looking for the hand, but apparently it's not there. So just turn on.
Jim, this is Jack.
Jack.
I'd like to make one comment, and that is happy birthday to Paul McNamara today. So.
Oh, our speechless mayor. Okay. Happy birthday.
Mayor McNamara now has audio.
Good. Well, then he can hear it. Thank you.
Well, great. I have a couple of comments to read into the concerning the ITAC committee. The Transnet Independent Taxpayers Oversight Committee is looking to fill one vacancy on its 7-member committee. It's a professional with experience in real estate, land economics, and/or right-of-way acquisition, which is pretty specific. The ITAC aids in implementation of the Transnet program, providing increased levels of accountability for expenditures and developing recommendations for improvements to the performance of the program. It's open to qualified individuals throughout the region with the appropriate skills. Individuals interested can obtain details regarding the responsibilities in an application by contacting Sandag or going on the Sandag website. Candidates will be required to complete a 700 form to ensure there's no conflicts of interest. However, individual employees or employed with organizations doing business with Sandag are not precluded from submitting an application for consideration. So the applications are due July 1, so the end of this month, July 1st. Let's see, I have one other, I just have a question. I noticed that we got emailed a public comment from somebody concerning speed limits in their neighborhood, and it looked like it was in the city of San Diego. I just want to make sure, I'm sure we probably already do, but does Sandag respond or forward these on to the city of San Diego if that's the case?
Chair, this is Monica Montgomery. You can forward that to my office and I'll forward it to the appropriate district.
Okay, I guess that would be for Sandag to do that, and maybe they already did, but I just noticed it was part of our public comment.
Yes, staff. Yes, definitely, staff can.
Okay,
we will take care of that.
All right.
Thanks.
And if there's no further comments, we'll move on to item 3. This is the Executive Director's Report. Hassan, if you're ready to give your.
Thank you, Chair Desmond. Good morning, committee members. Few items for you. to be informed. Last month we had some very good news here. We go through what we call federal certification every 4 years. Every 4 years, Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit review our work, certify us as a metropolitan planning organization or not. And this year, after many weeks of work, 2 days of meeting here at Sandag, I'm happy to report that the certification process was done. And usually the certification process come up with corrective action, recommendation, and commendations. In the corrective action area, there were no corrective action. And for that, I want to thank the team here, led by Elise and Phil, for getting us to a point where there is no corrective action. There were several recommendations, which all very good recommendation in terms of public participation, continuity of operational plan. And there were several commendations in several areas: freight planning, diversity and equity program, leadership and system engineering, engagement with tribal government, establishment of the Office of Independent Auditor. A brief state and federal legislative update. On May 14th, Governor Newsom released his May revised budget proposal, which proposes $14 billion in budget cuts, unless federal funds come in to replace that. When it comes to transportation, each of the proposed budget estimates estimate a reduction of $1.8 billion in fuel taxes. We continue to be advised so that we do not expect to see a slowdown of project delivery in the short term. The state legislature has until June 15th to finalize the budget. And at the Washington front, we're still waiting for potential stimulus package that we hope to be ready for, that brings some money to start building some projects. On the Central Mobility Hub and NAVOR, Sandag staff is continuing its work with the United States Navy. The CEQA streamlining bill that we have in Sacramento passed the Appropriation Committee and now going to the Assembly floor for passage very shortly. Very good news. The Navy Environmental Analysis and Sandag Transportation Planning process are pushing forward on both fronts. On the Del Mar Bluff, good news, Sandag and North County Transit District received $11.6 million grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation State of Good Repair Program. Congress member Mike Levin led the region's congressional delegation. We're grateful for Congressman Levin in supporting and securing this very important grant for Phase 5 of the Del Mar Bluff. This is a much needed infusion of funds for the stabilization project, and we want to thank all of you who continue to help us advocate for this work. As I stated for you over the past year, my goal is still to identify the rest of the funding needed to stabilize the Del Mar Bluff once and for all, which means the temporary solutions for the stabilization, which could last 20 to 30 years, will be done with the secured funding this year. And that's the goal, and I think that goal is within reach. Otay Mesa East, State Route 11, the construction work continues and is about 80 days ahead of schedule, given that we can do more closures these days. Highway extension on the southbound State Route 125 connector to eastbound State Route 11 and State Route 905. That's what I'm talking about. Flags have been posted at the port of entry site that maps out the facility footprint on the U.S. side of the border. It's about 125 acres, which is larger than Disneyland, just for comparison. We are expecting to open bids at the end of this month for the southbound State Route 125 connector to westbound State Route 905. What's really interesting is the fossils that were found recently. Excavation near State Route 11 unearthed a site with numerous fossils between 16 and 25 million years old. The team has been working with San Diego Natural History Museum to remove and preserve the fossils with minimal impact to construction. Sandag and Caltrans will work with the media to publicize this existing discovery when the time is appropriate. On the regional transportation plan, again, the regional transportation plan isn't scheduled to be released in a draft form in April 2021, adopted in November of 2021 of next year. We expect to present the vision to the transportation and regional planning committees in July, and then go to the board in August. Actually, the Transportation Committee will see a data presentation July 17th, and then July 7th, sorry, and August 7th is the presentation of the vision, but before that, the Transportation Committee will see a data presentation on July 17th, and we discussed that with Chairman Desmond in terms of the schedule. So August 7th is the time when we're going to unveil the vision to the Transportation Committee and Regional Planning. I'm happy to report that we're continuing to do online presentations to different stakeholders and different groups. The last one was done last night by Colleen, Ray, and myself to the Heights community group. Mid-Coast, moving forward a bit ahead of schedule. It's still on schedule to open late next year. The Shared Streets pilot program that we announced last month, I'm happy to report that 11 jurisdictions each were awarded $8,636 in the Shared Street pilot program funding. The program supports cities and the county in providing safe spaces for residents to obtain essential goods, services, and physical exercise. Those jurisdictions that received the grants are Chula Vista, County of San Diego, El Cajon, Encinitas, Escondido, Imperial Beach, La Mesa, National City, Oceanside, San Diego, and Solana Beach. To conclude, tell you a little bit about the reopening of the Sandag offices. As I send an email to the board of directors informing them that we began a gradual reopening of the office. This past week, we started with the executive team reporting to the office with all the safety measures in place. Starting next week, we will have staff members report to the office gradually with all the safety measures in place. The hope is the week of the 13th, we will start gradually opening the office for the public. And after that, the first time, which is July 17th, if members of the board or the committees feel like they want to attend in person, they can. We're placing the chairs 6 feet apart, limiting the number of people that can be in one room, but we are going to resume a gradual opening of the office to the public in the week of July 13th. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report, and I'll be happy to take any questions from the members.
Hassan, thank you very much. Congratulations on the certification and the fossil find and the progress being made on the Del Mar Bluffs, which we got a presentation on later here. Also want to thank Sandag for the analysis countywide for concerning, unfortunately, they're bad numbers, but the unemployment information that comes out. We appreciate that analysis. And like I said, unfortunately, it's bad news, but it's news we need, and appreciate Sandag's effort in putting that out.
Thank you.
Is there any questions? I guess if you have a question, turn your camera on, and then I know you want to say something or ask a question. All right, seeing none. Who's
Chair, this is Joanna Scavone. I have a question. Hassan, you mentioned last time we met and then again today about the Mid-Coast Trolley project and being ahead of schedule. And I wonder, I think in this time, all of us are looking for silver linings. So can you share a little bit more detail that what we might be able to pass on to others about that schedule and why we're ahead? And you mentioned last time it was because the closures.
Yeah, well, yes. First of all, it's not ahead of schedule for maybe a week or two, simply because we were able to make more closures given the light traffic in the last couple of months. The fact that it's on schedule and on budget for such a major infrastructure project is good news by itself. All the other projects in Sandag, which we have about 110 projects, are moving forward on schedule. Here is something that I don't want to spoil the party here, but like Chair Desmond said about the economy, get information sometimes it's not so good. Given the impact of COVID-19, the budget impact, and that could change. We're not making any changes in the immediate budget proposal to the board. We're going next Friday to the board of directors for approving the final budget, which had $168 million less than the last budget. But what we did is we managed the cash flow by talking about the project in 2021. If the impact of COVID-19 on the budget will continue to stand, unfortunately, I'll have to say maybe we're going to come back to the board and say, okay, we can't move all projects. But for now, all moving on schedule. The Mid-Coast, especially the biggest project in the county, is a week or so ahead of schedule.
Thank you.
All right. I saw Mr. Mosca, your video flash in there. Did you have a question? No.
No, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I was just checking out whether or not the video actually works. So thank you.
All right. Yeah, it works. And yeah, anybody else, if you have questions, turn your video on, and we'll make sure you get in. Okay, moving on to item 4. This is the annual report of the legislature on public transit. Allison is going to be giving a presentation today. So Allison, we'll turn it over to you. There you are. And if anybody else could mute their mics if you're not going to be speaking. Thanks.
Sure. This is Tessa. Again, I'd just like to state for the record that there were no public comments on item 3.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning. Can you hear me okay? Uh-oh.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Was my nightmare last night. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Allison Woodworth, and I'm a regional planner here at Sandag. I'm here to bring the annual report to the legislature on transportation. This report is mandated by legislation passed in 2017 that requires Sandag's Board of Directors provide an annual report developed by the agency's Transportation Committee to the legislature on or before July 1st of each year. This document must report on 5 elements, which are public transportation needs, transit funding criteria used by the agency, additional work on public transit, recommended transit funding levels, and funds spent explicitly on public transit in the relevant fiscal year, which was, for this report, FY19. This is the 3rd report that Sandag has developed, and as noted in the memo that prefaces the document as attachment 1, this report is contextualized by a pre-COVID transportation world, and as such, future funding levels may change. As the region weathers impacts to ridership, economy, and public health, Sandag, MTS, and NCTD continue their mission to improve mobility safely and conveniently for all. The low-sand rail corridor resiliency, once considered a long-term challenge, has been elevated to the forefront of the region's transportation concerns, and as you just heard Hassan say, will be highlighted in a following presentation later this morning. And the Mid-Coast Trolley reached its halfway point in FY19. Expenditures on the 2nd busiest intercity rail corridor in the nation and on the region's largest transit infrastructure project ever developed represent Sandag's commitment to long-term planning and mobility within and through our region, connecting places to live, work, and play. The Transportation Committee is asked to recommend the Board of Directors approve submission of this report to the legislature. Thank you.
All right, Allison, thank you very much. Do you have any questions or comments on this item? Or a motion? All right, I'll move to approve. Item 4.
And I will second. Here.
And Sankey's the second. Okay. Maybe I should wait a little longer, but for people to jump on. But is there any other comments or questions by committee? Tessa, do we have any public comments on this item?
There are no public comments on item 4.
Okay, well, I don't see any other people jumping in here. So if you could take a roll call vote, please, on item 4.
Thank you. San Diego Airport Authority, Joanna Schiavone.
Scavone, yes.
City of San Diego, Councilmember Monica Montgomery.
Yes.
County of San Diego, Chair Jim Testa.
Yes.
East County, Councilmember Jennifer Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza. Oh, thank you. MTS, Mayor Alejandra Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis, yes.
North County Coastal, Deputy Mayor Jack Feller.
I'm transit, so I'll vote yes.
North County Coastal. I'm sorry.
Thank you. It's Jewel. I was just going to mention I'm North County Coastal and Edson, yes.
Thank you. And North County Inland, Mayor McNamara.
McNamara, yes.
North County Transit has already registered his vote as yes. San Diego Port District Commissioner Gary Bonelli.
Bonelli, yes.
And South County Vice Chair Bill Sankey.
Sankey, yes.
Thank you. That concludes the vote and it passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Moving on to item 5. This is our Transportation Development Act fiscal year 2020 Productivity Improvement Program and fiscal year 2021 allocations. Lisa Madsen is going to be giving the presentation here today. So Lisa, are you there? There you are.
I am here with my microphone unmuted now. Yes, so this item discusses the transit agency productivity associated with the Transportation Development Act claim for fiscal year 2020. Sandag, as the designated regional transportation planning agency, is responsible for the allocation of TDA funds to MTS and NCTD. The TDA stipulates that transit operators can't be allocated more dollars in fiscal year 2021 than were allocated in fiscal year 2020 unless Sandag determines that they made a reasonable effort to implement the productivity improvements for the current fiscal year. Additionally, this year we have added the performance monitoring of FACT, which serves as our CTSA. The transit monitoring program includes an evaluation of all 6 performance measures included in the TDA, which are detailed in the staff report. The charts in attachment 1, which begins on page 38 of the full agenda PDF or page 5 of the individual report, show the individual productivity improvement results by mode. These charts and the data behind them are used by Sandag staff to evaluate the productivity of the agencies over a 3-year period for a thorough analysis. The data is from Q2 of FY17 to Q2 of FY20, which is through December 31st, 2019, so before the COVID-19 pandemic. This is a determination of reasonable efforts over a 3-year period and which does not include the impacts of COVID-19. So between Q2 of FY 2019 and Q2 of FY 2020, overall regional ridership increased in contrast to previous years where the agencies have experienced ridership declines. MTS and NCTD have both worked hard to increase productivity, and at the end of Q2 of FY 2020, which is the period of October through December 2019, some performance indicators had begun to show gains. For example, MTS Trolley and NCTD Sprinter saw an increase in passengers per revenue hour. As part of the annual look at the transit agency's performance, we also revisit the recommendations from the last triennial performance audit. Attachments 3 and 4 of the report show the FY 2016 through 2018 triennial audit recommendations for MTS and NCTD and their actions to implement those recommendations. Attachment 5 includes the performance monitoring report submitted by FACT to Sandag. The monitoring report shows that FACT is fully complying with all requirements in the agreement. With the operator's actions to implement the audit recommendations and improve productivity, it is Sandag staff's opinion that both MTS and NCTD have made reasonable efforts toward achieving their fiscal year 2020 productivity goals. So therefore, the Transportation Committee is asked to recommend that the Board of Directors approve the eligibility of the Metropolitan Transit System and North County Transit District to receive their FY 2021 TDA allocations of funds. Sharon Cooney from MTS, Matt Tucker from NCTD, and Arun Prem from FACT are here to answer any specific questions you may have for them. And that concludes my presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions for Lisa? Lisa, I guess you'd mentioned that the this does not include any of the COVID. So did it it's only went up for the second quarter of fiscal year 2020. So that was January 1st. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's December 31st, but that's correct.
2019, even though it's fiscal year 2020. So,
yes.
All right. So next year we'll see COVID, I guess, input or influence on all of these numbers apparently. And but that's just not because of the time frame of this report. It's not there. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then I would ask next time, and no fault to yours. And there's a lot of charts in here, and as you're kind of going through and expressing, and I know this is kind of clunky, that if we could see what chart you're referencing for some of the data, it was hard for me to follow. So that's all. And I know this is clunky, but if you're referencing a certain one, if we could have that up on the screen, and I guess that's just for all of Sandag more so than just for yourself. So thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments on item 5? Okay. Oh, Mayor Edson.
I do not have a comment, but I would be happy to make a motion to approve item 5.
Thank you. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Almost second.
Yeah, I think I heard Mr. Feller's voice in there as a second. So do we have any public comment on this item, Tessa?
Thank you, Chair. We do not have public comment on item 5.
And if there's no other discussion, I guess we could have a roll call vote, item 5.
San Diego County Airport Authority, Joanna Schiavone.
Schiavone, yes.
City of San Diego, Councilmember Monica Montgomery.
Yes.
County of San Diego, Chair Jim Desmond.
Yes.
East County, Councilmember Jennifer Mendoza.
Yes.
MTS, Mayor Alejandra Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis, yes.
North County Coastal, Mayor Jewel Edson.
North County Coastal, Edson, yes.
North County Inland, Mayor Paul McNamara.
McNamara, yes.
North County Transit District, Deputy Mayor Jack Feller.
Yes.
San Diego Port District, Commissioner Gary Benelli.
Benelli, yes.
And South County Vice Chair Bill Sankey.
Sankey, yes.
Thank you. That item passes unanimously.
All right, thank you, everyone. We're now going to move on to item number 6, Item number 6, we have a presentation. This is our comprehensive multimodal corridor plans, an overview of the plans going to be coming forward. We have Richard and Colleen Clemenson are going to be giving the presentation today. Richard Chavez and Colleen Clemenson. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Desmond and members of the Transportation Committee. It's nice to see you this morning. And Richard and I are pleased to provide you with an update on the comprehensive multimodal corridor plans. One of the reasons Richard and I wanted to do this together is just provide a little bit of a refresher on what a comprehensive multimodal corridor plan is, why we're doing them, and how they relate to the regional plan. And this is really just based on questions that have come up since we produced the report. So previous actions that have led us to where we are today. So last July, on July 12th, the Sandag Board of Directors took an action to tell the staff continue to develop a regional plan that meets federal and state laws and targets, assumes realistic and transparent revenue assumptions, utilizes the 5 big moves and complete corridors model, and prioritizes corridors previously scheduled for investment, such as State Route 78, 5267, and the 94-125 interchange. That was followed up by an action in September by the Board of Directors to approve $40 million for comprehensive multimodal corridor plans and advanced planning over the next 5 years. So just a refresher on what a comprehensive multimodal corridor plan is, given that our language in transportation planning continues to get more and more complex and we seem to be adding new terms all of the time. It's really about integrating our transportation planning with multiple modes. And this is really aligning our planning with state goals and state funding. So what these plans are intended to do is dig deeper into what might be more of a simple line on a map in the regional plan and dive deeper into that line and looking more at the details in a particular corridor. And CMCPs are suggested by the California Transportation Commission. In fact, they lay out specific guidelines to follow if we want to be eligible for Senate Bill 1 and other state and federal funding. So these are the key elements why. What they are is integrated multimodal planning in all of our corridors. They're more detailed than what is in the regional plan, and it really sets us up for state and federal funding. A really good example of a CMCP or a corridor plan, and really what I've been referring to as kind of a first generation of CMCPs, although I think Gustavo will point out that this is something similar that was done in the I-15 corridor. But if you think of the I-5 North Coast corridor, it's the HOV lanes on the highway, it's the rail improvements along the coast, the bike and ped improvements in the adjacent communities, and a transportation demand management plan that goes along with that. All of those components came together to make the North Coast Corridor Plan. And probably, I think all of us know it's one of the biggest projects ever approved by the California Coastal Commission. The sort of latest generation of CMCPs even goes further to fully integrate and look at the relationship among the different modes. So this is an image taken from the 5 big moves, from the regional plan, and looking at all of the corridors and thinking about goods movement, transit, HOV lanes, how the lanes are used by emergency vehicles and services, and in the same corridor, high-speed transit, bike and ped improvements, and then what happens on the local streets and roads that supports and reinforces transportation in our corridors. The Board of Directors prioritized 12 different corridor projects in 2 phases. And the first phase of corridor projects include the Purple Line and I-805 South, Blue Line, I-5 South, high-speed transit with State Route 52 and State Route 67, as well as the Sprinter, Palomar Airport Road, SR 78 corridor, and the Central Mobility Hub and connections. And now I'm going to turn it over to Richard, who's going to go through and share with you where we are in the process, how the work is getting underway, some refinements perhaps to the project areas. And with that, I'll turn it over to Richard. Thank you.
There we go. Thanks, Colleen. So progress to date on development of the CMCP program and the corridor plans for the San Diego region. We held a workshop with our partners at Caltrans District 11, formed the teams and established work plans for each of the corridors, working on defining the geographical areas for each of those corridor plans. And we developed issues and opportunity statements for each of the corridors. Those appear in attachment 2 of the agenda report, and we very much appreciate any Transportation Committee feedback on those issues and opportunity statements. Please keep in mind those are a draft work in progress. We expect those to evolve considerably over time, especially once we get into stakeholder engagement and public outreach. Next slide, please. So this is a draft exhibit of the geographical areas covered by each of the corridors. I'd like to point out a couple recommended modifications to the corridors from what the board approved back in September of 2019. Starting with number 1 on the list there, the purple line Interstate 805 corridor and the blue line I-5 South corridor. We're recommending that those 2 corridors be combined into one corridor study. There's a lot of geographical overlap with the planned infrastructure in those corridors, as well as we're expecting the policy priorities for those corridors to be very similar. So we're recommending that those 2 be combined into one corridor study. On the other hand, the C to Santee State Route 52, San Vicente State Route 67 corridor, we're recommending that that corridor be split into 2 separate corridor studies. Very different geographical conditions. State Route 67, a very rural corridor, State Route 52, more urban. We're also expecting the policy considerations to be quite different in those 2 geographical areas, so we're recommending that corridor be split into 2. The North County corridor, State Route 78, that's shown in blue in the exhibit, and the Central Mobility Hub and Connections corridor study area shown in yellow. Next slide, please. So if you comb through the policy considerations for doing corridor studies outlined in guidelines provided by the California Transportation Commission, Federal Highway Administration, and Federal Transit Administration, you can kind of boil it into these 12 policy areas. We presented these 12 policy areas to the Transportation Committee back in February. Based on comments received from the Transportation Committee back in February, changes are shown in red to these 12 policy considerations. We're asking each of the corridor teams to prioritize these 12 policy considerations for their corridor. Not so much that any one of these policy considerations is more important than another, but it's going to help the teams focus on the transportation solutions that are appropriate for each corridor. And especially as we start getting into stakeholder engagement and community outreach, it's going to help us to develop consensus on what those policy considerations are and what the priority for the transportation solutions are in each of those corridors. Next slide, please. This last slide and a little bit about our implementation schedule. So we've formed teams and developed the work plans for each corridor. Moving into the summer and fall, we'll be coming back to the Transportation Committee with deep dives on each of the corridors based on the data analysis and the stakeholder engagement. We'll be coming back to the Transportation Committee plan starting in September through mid-November with each of the corridors for review and discussion by the Transportation Committee. Heading into this fall and winter of 2021, we'll be conducting the community outreach, and then moving into spring and summer of 2021, presenting the draft corridor plans and final corridor plans to the Transportation Committee for review and discussion. And with that, I'd like to turn over to Gustavo from Caltrans for some final remarks.
And if I may, just a couple of things I wanted to clarify before we go to Gustavo. Good morning, Gustavo. So first of all, I wanted to point out that the recommendations that Richard was expressing about kind of separating a couple of the projects, bringing the I-5 South, 805 South Blue Line and Purple Line together. Those are some of the recommendations that are coming up from our project teams. We will be coming back to the Transportation Committee and do more deep dives, as Richard had explained in this timeline, where we can talk more in detail about that. So this is sort of like the preliminary look at each of these corridors and how we're thinking they might shape up. The other thing I wanted to point out, there was an error in the staff report about transit not being included in the SR 52 corridor or 67 corridor. That was incorrect, and we have corrected the record, and the staff report on the web now shows that crossed out. And I guess what I wanted to express here is that it's too early to pull anything out. We need to keep all options on the table until we're able to get more into the data and details and sharing that with our stakeholders, with the Transportation Committee. So I think that sets us up to have Gustavo talk about kind of the state perspective and Caltrans' role in these. So thank you, Richard, and thank you, Gustavo.
Thank you, Colleen and Richard, for a great presentation. And like Colleen mentioned, these corridor management plans are very important because they set us up to compete for funding. And this is one of the reasons why the example that Colleen mentioned on the North Coast Corridor, having the EWP on the North Coast Corridor is a good example of why we were able to secure $200 million of congested corridors for that corridor. And so if we want to continue competing for congested corridors and trade corridor funds, it's very important to have these plans in place. But it's also, these plans are also just good transportation planning in general, because they make us think about all those policy points that Richard shared and make us develop plans that address all of those issues: safety, sustainability, multimodality, and effective transportation as well. So I wanted to thank Colleen and Richard and all of the staff that have been working behind the scenes, like Elisa Arias, our planning director, Ann Fox, our corridor directors, Karen, Allen, Mario, and Ross, for all the collaboration that has taken place until now, putting together the teams that will develop these corridors and also putting together the corridor plans. And I really look forward to actually hearing more specifics about each corridor once the data analysis, the stakeholder engagement, and the community outreach happens later this year. So thank you again, and I'm also here in case there are any questions for Caltrans, but I just want to let you know and reiterate that Caltrans is committed to work with Sandag and our regional partners and the local agencies to make these corridor plans a success.
Is that the end of the presentation?
That's it. Back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleen, thank you very much, and Gustavo and Richard, I appreciate the presentation. And I thank you for the clarification, Colleen, on that edit, because I guess I'm assuming that you're going to come back to the TC committee and provide us with data and modeling and of all the different modes working together in these corridors, and options for us to consider and why you chose certain options, and maybe there's other input from the Transportation Committee. So I appreciate that. Yeah, so I had the question is, why are you pulling something out already before we even see why everything should be on the table, I guess, at this point. So I appreciate that clarification that everything's back on the table. Thank you very much. I'll go to the committee for any questions. Any of the committee members have any questions or comments? My screen's kind of filled up here. I'm going to try to move it around. Is there any questions or comments from the committee members? I see Mr. Sankey.
And now
Bill,
you
did
should
want to say something?
Yes, please. Thanks, Jim. And thanks, Colleen and team, for that great report. It's great to see you, especially you, Colleen. Hi. So as I read the Central Mobility Hub issues and opportunities, I'm pleased to see that the traffic corridor to the North Island and other naval bases on Coronado is directly addressed in several sentences, and we appreciate that very much. Connecting it to the Central Mobility Hub kind of sort of alludes to the tunnel under the bay that was talked about earlier in the planning process. I think from Coronado's standpoint, the Navy's reluctance to do the last tunnel we talked about from the bridge to the base would sort of become an impediment. So I'd encourage, as you develop those issues and opportunities, that you involve the Navy very closely in the opportunities for that mobility hub, and maybe even seek some lower hanging fruit. For example, HOV lane on the bridge, or perhaps some ferry service, some other opportunities that might be more happens quicker and be easier to do. I agree very much in the 5267 approach to split those. They're clearly different corridors with different needs. And as we've heard from our friends in Ramona, the need to move on that one quicker, splitting it out is probably a good idea. I saw we're in the housing business now on the transportation side, and that rolls right into what we're doing at MTS, using some of our surplus land and surplus parking to lease to affordable housing providers. And I think we need to definitely look for opportunities along the way with that. My question, if I could, is, for example, there's talk in here about the connection with the airport from the Central Mobility Hub. I know MTS is working on a trolley to the airport as well, and feasibility studies in terms of routings and overpasses and the complications of getting to the other side of the freight rail tracks, but that it's still ongoing, and I would hope that as the project goes forward, that MTS and especially MTS and NCT are connected. So I'm curious, at what level are you discussing things with those transit agencies right now? And then finally, the 5 and 78 interchange, as well as the 94 and the 125 interchange, were mentioned a couple times. I'm curious, as you do these corridor plans, if you're prioritizing particular parts of them that can be done sooner. For example, a freeway ramp before you get the right of way to do a rail system. Is there going to be within those mobility corridors recommendations in terms of the order in which to tackle these particular improvements that are so necessary? So two questions really: coordination with the transit agencies, and then prioritizations within the corridors for particularly doable, short-term, big bang for the buck items.
Thank you, Vice Chair Sankey, and very good questions. So first of all, even though I know it wasn't a question, you talk about the connection to Naval Base San Diego. We are working very closely right now with the Navy, and they will be part of the team on this project. So just want to make sure you're aware of that. As far as working with MTS will be an integral partner on all of these corridor studies, and NCTD for the North County. So when we talk about here the stakeholder engagement in the implementation schedule, stakeholders are the local jurisdictions, the transit providers, Caltrans, Sandag. It's like, who are all the entities that are part of the transportation corridor? So absolutely at the table, and that will be a critical part that we look at. What's the trolley option compared to a high-speed, train option? That sort of thing will all be part of that study. The other thing I wanted to point out, and this is where some of the kind of the funding in the 12 corridors gets confusing with the other actions that the board took last September. So the $40 million is for these broader corridor plans. The board of directors also allocated funding to do preliminary engineering on interchanges at 78 and 5, 78 and 15, 94, 125, and a number of other corridors. It also included some preliminary engineering on the rest of the 78 corridor and the 67. So absolutely, as we're looking at the corridor plans, that work will still be going on. The preliminary engineering will be happening at the same time. So to the extent this planning can help assist in that, those will be working very closely together. So thank you for that question. That the budget item that was approved by the board last September was extremely complicated and had a whole lot in it. And so part of what we are hoping to do today is be able to sort through some of that and kind of reiterate the actions the board has taken.
Yeah, let me just, if I may, Chairman add to the Vice Chairman question? So which project move forward obviously is going to depend a great deal on funding, right? Right now, the board last September allocated the $600 million available from all sources, Transnet, federal, state. And that money is between now and 2025. So there is no money left to allocate between now and 2025. Any money available after 2025 is going to determine how we move about this project. And by then, the corridor study will be done. Our hope is some of these, if there is a national stimulus, some of these, especially those in design and advanced environmental, our hope is they're going to be ready to compete, but that's not known, will not be known until we know whether the stimulus is for the only project or not. But obviously, there is no funding to do any of these at this stage, at least not until 2025. A national stimulus could help, but still will not build. So it will depend a great deal where we're going to get the money from.
That's understandable completely. When I think of low-hanging fruit, I think of several cans of white paint that could do an HOV lane down the center lane of the bridge right now. But I think we can afford that maybe. Anyway, I look forward to the process. Thank you very much.
No, Vice Chair, we're going to do a tunnel under the bay instead and close the bridge and just make it a walkable bridge.
All right. Okay. Well, good luck with that. Hey, I'm getting signals that the internet is getting unstable with many screens, video screens open. So does anybody have anybody else? I don't see any other questions. Thank you. Yes,
I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead.
Jennifer?
Yes, I just had a couple comments. One on the 52. The 52 is just crying out for HOV and or rapid bus lanes, and especially with the growth in the Santee and Lakeside communities. So my comment is I hope that that's going to be addressed in these plans. And then with regard to the 67. I'm sure you're very aware of this, but at the there's a signal, I believe it's at Lake Jennings Road, and depending on whether it's the afternoon or the morning, traffic is backed up for literally miles at this signal, and I'd like to see in the plans for Highway 67 an alternative. Or several, be presented with several alternatives in their cost. Of course, in a perfect world with all the funding in the world, a bridge there would be awesome. But maybe exploring things like roundabouts or directing traffic in a way that alleviates some of that congestion on the 67. And those are my comments. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. Anybody else have a question or comment? Colleen, did you want to respond to that? Or,
Yes, if I may, Supervisor Jesmond, Councilmember Mendoza, those are really good points, and I think this even gets back to something that Councilmember Sankey was getting to. What's some of the low-hanging fruit? So yes, these CMCPs will be looking at what are some near-term projects as well as the longer-term projects. And then the second thing I wanted to mention is that we will be looking at alternatives. And so that will be an opportunity for us to share that with Transportation Committee members and other stakeholders as we refine the projects that end up in the plan. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilmember Montgomery, did you have a question? Can't hear you.
Sorry, had to unmute. Thank you very much. And if I'm running into some internet problems, so if I take my webcam off, that's why. But I just had a quick comment. Thank you for the presentation. I also just want to, for the issues and opportunity statements, I want to ensure that the Purple Line corridor has some language around needing to reduce greenhouse gases. That's really per the Cal Enviro screen. That's an area of some of the highest exposure to pollution. So I just want to make sure that that's clarified in the issues and opportunities statement. But that's all. I don't know if you have any feedback on that.
If I may, Chairman, this is Hassan. To Montgomery's, Council Member Montgomery's comment and Mendoza and Mr. Sankey, all of these, obviously, corridor studies is gonna look at alternatives. We have not excluded or included anything yet because we haven't started. Like the chair, Supervisor Desmond said, evaluations will be done. But I also want to remind all of you that this project is also subject to meeting our state and federal requirements, which is clearly the first bullet point of the board action last July. Regardless of what the alternative analysis does, it very clearly is going to come again, like the chairman said, with analysis, data, information, and at the end of the day, we have to put a plan that meets the requirement. And that is probably one of the most restrictive things for us when we move forward. It's not, nobody doubts the need on the 67 and 52, but or the purple line. But the question is, what would give us the greenhouse gas emission reduction that we need to meet state and federal requirements?
Thank you very much.
Mayor Alejandro Soleto Solis.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you again for staff. And I just, as wearing my MTS hat, I'm really pleased to hear that, you know, the dialogue will continue to be strong amongst all of our transit organizations. One thing I would love to hear, following up on Councilmember Montgomery's question about the Purple Line, I'd like to, request a briefing on what the thoughts are specifically regarding the Purple Line. Again, all of these things, we have to work together. And I think right now is the time, and we've got the leadership ready to do that. So I just want to, again, thank you, Colleen, thank you, Hassan, for, all of your efforts, and to the MTS team, who, again, with the loss of Paul, Chair now at the helm, we're ready to continue moving forward. I think this last slide that you have here for the implementation schedule, one thing that I would just want to ask is, where does the funding portion, or where, as part of this implementation schedule, where do we get the resources, and explain to our community where the money is to kind of implement all these things, come into the conversation? Thank you.
Do you want to answer that, or? So I think, thank you for that, Mayor Sotelo Solis. The funding really is, we can be talking about that throughout the process. The whole reason for doing these plans is to be ready for funding. So federal stimulus, state funding, whatever is available, we are going to aggressively seek funding to make these projects a reality. So we can definitely talk about that with the community throughout the process.
I think, sorry, Mr. Chair, if I could, I think that's key, that as we roll out any of these things, I know Chair Desmond has brought that up, if we can have that as part of the dialogue ongoing, we're looking at this pot of money or these grants, and just highlight, I think that'll solve and provide us areas to strengthen the argument as to why these programs are so solid. So thank you, Colleen. Appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Benelli.
Thank you, Chair Desmond. The comment I have is not a question, it's a comment. As we move these 5 study areas ahead, and we move into the big five moves, if that's the way we go in the overall regional transportation plan, we've got to keep in mind the network. You know, we all know intellectually live, play, work in different places, but as we're trying to build for generations today and future generations, it's the mobility network, the transportation network. It's got to be all modalities and how they interact and how people will choose to use them. So we all know our geography is pretty good. My bias naturally is the 5 cities around the Bay. But from a regional standpoint, for the 4,200 square miles of the San Diego region, we have to build a network in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Benelli. I don't see anybody else coming on. I just have a couple questions or comments, I guess. I think it's very important, you know, with Hassan brought up the funding and everybody else, you know, we're talking about funding, particularly in these COVID times and with 30% unemployment. I really doubt we're going to get a sales tax measure passed anytime soon. So maybe, you know, maybe there needs to be more emphasis, and I'll just, as a suggestion, I guess, for staff, is we have, you know, short-term and long-term plans. I know that complicates things, but, you know, if we don't have the money, we may have to just, you know, fix what we have as opposed to working on all these projects. So I think that's going to be important. And I also then have a question on the timing. I know you're going to bring back the 12 corridors, Colleen, to this committee, but we're going to have the regional transportation plan on, I guess, presented the preliminary on April of 2021, yet we may not start seeing these corridor plans until September or November of this year. Do you plan on presenting one a month, or plan on presenting them all before the RTP comes out? It seems there's not enough time to do all this. So I'm just curious what you're looking at.
What we're looking at is that the generalized corridors are already in the regional plan. We're not going to be coming up with anything here that would not already be, say, covered off in the regional plan. These are the details that get us to the engineering and design that then we can actually fund. And so the details that come out of these CMCPs actually end up in our shorter term implementation plan, which is the RTIP. Now, maybe through these corridor studies, we would come up with a completely different project that has never been envisioned before. Then we would have to figure out how that fits back into the regional plan. So I think this really has to be kind of an iterative process. The more information we get, we can feed that into the regional plan. We feed it into the next regional plan. And we're not going to hold off on the regional plan because we haven't finished these. So we just have to, we'll take all the information that we possibly have at the state that we have to release the draft plan and include them. And the rest can come into, say, the next plan. But again, we're building the plan so that everything that we would come up here would be consistent with the regional plan. That's our job, to present that to you in that way.
I guess there's 12 corridors, and I'd like to have the opportunity for the Transportation Committee to take a look at all these corridors. So as we, can kind of see the network, as Mr. Benelli points out, so that I just want to make sure we have enough time to look at these programs at Transportation and make recommendations to the board. It's basically our job. So I think we have enough time to do that. And Hassan, do you have anything on that?
Supervisor, you're absolutely, the committee will see the 12 corridors. And you're right, and it's not a perfect, in an ideal world, you would do these before you put your plan out, but we're not in an ideal world. So, but the committee will absolutely see the 12 corridors that the board funded last September, whether they're in design or environmental. And the committee will have a chance to make recommendations to the board regarding what they think the corridor is. These corridor plans will inform the plan, but it's not going to be a perfect fit given the schedule. But like Commissioner Benelli said, at the end of the day, we have to have a system that works for San Diego region and that meets the requirement. So there's going to be a lot of trial and error as we move forward through the draft and the final. And I can assure you that, I mean, as bad as COVID-19 is, we would hope that at least some of our employers will continue the telecommute. That will give us some help in meeting greenhouse gas emissions. That's our hope, and we hope that you as the leaders can allocate some funding to encourage that, because we are climbing a steep hill to meet 19% per capita reduction. So you're right on the not a perfect fit, but the committee will see the 12 corridors, and obviously you're going to see the draft plan before it's released.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then I just have, I guess I have to talk about my favorite subject. On attachment 2, the issues and opportunities statement that you put out for each of the corridors. I noticed some of the priority projects have both issues and opportunities, while others do not. The Central Mobility Hub, the 52 and the 67 all have opportunities listed. I guess opportunities for moving those forward, or opportunities to solve some of the issues there. The North County Regional Corridor, which is a 78, doesn't have any opportunities listed. It's just the issues. In the issues, you know, the only issue includes, well, one of the issues is the lack of an HOV/managed lane and a freeway connector. It only mentions the I-5 and 78. We both also had the opportunities, I think, at the I-15 and 78. So I want to make sure, I'd like to see, maybe if you could email it to the group or something like that, what are the opportunities also for that corridor, because there's none listed for the 78. So with that, I'd like to, and also I noticed that you just have HOV/managed lane. Well, right now in the RTIP, it's 2 HOVs and managed lanes, where this doesn't implement the plural on that. So yeah, I'll go ahead and like to make a motion to accept the report with the following modification: to ask and direct staff to include opportunity statements for all the projects listed, including both freeway connectors, the I-15 and the I-5 in attachment 2, and then the freeway connectors, HOV managed lanes, be plural for the 78. If there's any other requests for additions or anything to that motion, be happy to entertain them. Or a second.
Chair Desmond, I'll go ahead and second that motion, as long as staff doesn't have any heartache with the task. And I'm seeing Colleen nodding and smiling. Yeah, so my second stays. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion or?
Chair, this is Jack. I would, since I've got, I'm sure Gustavo's still hanging around there, I would like to offer up that if they have the funding, you know, the broken windows theory of if it starts to look bad, everything's going to start to look bad, and some of our freeways up here in North County are looking bad, and we need to make pretty what we have to affect any decent change on into the future. So I'm just mentioning that for Gustavo. Thank you.
And I'll back you up with that. I just, this morning, I took the I-5 South connector out of Oceanside at Coast Highway, and there's a homeless encampment on the freeway on-ramp there at I-5 South. But so I guess if Gustavo could take that under consideration, or okay. Do we have any other comments? Or Gustavo, did you want to say something?
Yes, message received. I just want to share that with the COVID crisis, some of our activities, maintenance activities, were curled back because of concerns with CDC guidelines. But we will be resume some of our maintenance activities to clear litter from the freeways soon. This month, later this month. And with respect to encampments, we're still not removing encampments, but we have been cleaning areas where there are encampments, and we will continue to do so until we are actually allowed to remove encampments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Jim.
Okay.
Jim, I don't want to gang up on Gustavo, but you made me think of something, Jack, with your comment to Gustavo. We have a serious issue with the bridge, which falls into the mobility corridor of the central region and getting people to and from the Navy base, related to suicide. And the COVID crisis has changed that equation in remarkable ways. We had 3 jumpers in one day a couple weeks ago, and we've had a couple days with 2 folks who've taken their lives in one day, and we're used to about 15 a year. So as we plan that corridor, I know there's been some planning efforts already from Caltrans, but we can't leave that off the table as we plan this mobility corridor, because the bridge is a critical link for the base, and also we have lives to save. So thank you. And again, just a comment, and I apologize for jumping back in.
Okay, if we have any other comments? Yes, and do we have any public comments on this item, Tessa?
We do not have public comments on this item.
Chair, this is Councilmember Montgomery. Can you repeat your motion, please?
Yes, I'd like to ask staff, a motion to approve the report and direct staff to include the opportunity statements for all projects listed in the attachment 2, which are the corridors are going to be working on first. For all, include opportunity statements for all projects listed in attachment 2, including both freeway connectors, the I-15 and the I-5 on the 78, and for make the HOV/managed lanes plural, as it is in the current RTP for the one of the issues on the 78. So that was a change on that one, and I did ask that they email those corrections to us after the vote.
Okay, thank you. My only concern is that in the motion, I don't want to prioritize some needs over other needs that are already clearly lined out. I'll go ahead and support it, but I would like to circle back and make sure that we're going about this in an equitable way. There has been talk about the conditions north of the 8, but it's almost like we have it's probably 5 times that bad on the east, the east part of the county and in the south and the southeastern. So I just don't want to prioritize one area or the other. I think we all have very tremendous needs.
Well, and I appreciate that. That's not my intent at all. It just clarifications on opportunities. And I don't I guess my point is it's not equitably laid out with opportunities on there, but I'm not trying to get ahead of the line or anything else, but you got to come up to North County more often. We'd appreciate having you up there.
Hey, listen, I'm up there, have family up there and everything, but I represent South. So when we come back, I would like to acknowledge 54, 120, the 125, the 94. Those need attention as well. I don't think they need to be a part of the motion at this point, but this is an interactive process, so I will be calling those things out in more specificity as we go forward.
That's why we're here on this committee. Thank you. Okay, seeing no other comments, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. San Diego County Airport Authority, Joanna Schiavone.
Schiavone, yes.
And there we go. City of San Diego, Councilmember Monica Montgomery.
Yes.
County of San Diego Chair Jim Desmond.
Yes.
East County, Councilmember Jennifer Mendoza.
Yes.
MTS Mayor Alejandro Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis, yes, with supporting of Monica Montgomery's points. Thank you.
North County Coastal, Mayor Jewel Edson.
Edson, yes.
North County Inland, Mayor Paul McNamara.
McNamara, yes.
North County Transit, Deputy Mayor Jack Feller.
Feller, yes.
Port of San Diego, Commissioner Gary Benelli.
Benelli, yes.
South County, Vice Chair Bill Sankey.
Sankey, yes.
Thank you. Item 6 passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thanks for the presentations, Colleen and Gustavo and Richard. Thanks. Moving on to the next item. This is item 7. This is the Del Mar Bluffs long-term alternatives. We have a presentation today. Linda Culp is going to be giving us this information. And Linda, I'll give it to you. Thank you. Can't hear you.
Thank you. Now, good?
We can hear you now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, item 7 provides an update on both the current work to stabilize the low sand rail corridor along the coastal bluff area in Del Mar and an upcoming study to analyze realigning this segment into a tunnel and off the bluff. Next slide. Attachment 1 of the staff report shows you how this segment fits into the overall Southern California rail network. And then here we've zoomed in on just that specific corridor along the bluff. Single track segment of our corridor, very busy, over 50 trains a day use this segment of our rail corridor. Next, please. Currently, Sandag and NCTD are working on 2 efforts, as I said. In terms of stabilizing the track bed in this segment of the railroad corridor, which is subject to erosion. The last few years, in particular, that erosion has happened in episodes. Over the last 20 years or so, though, Sandag and NCTD have stabilized to limit that kind of erosion and that kind of bluff retreat. Last Thanksgiving, in fact, we had a very severe storm, overwhelmed a lot of the drainage along this segment, and it did result in some significant emergency repairs. You can see them in the photo there, some of the damage. Next, we are right now under construction of some of the more urgent repairs in addition to the emergency work that took place. We call this phase 4 repairs, and that construction's underway now and should finish up this fall. And then a lot of our agencies, Sandag, NCTD, heading up a $100 million effort to find funding to complete phases 5 and 6. And in a nutshell, 5 being up on the top of the track bed, sort of where the photo is, and then phase 6 being down on the beach level, both working together. And we're happy to have received a state grant announced a couple months ago, and then Hassan mentioned the federal grant last week. And then we're working on another application for state funding to complete funding requests for phase 5. So that's been a concerted effort on a lot of agencies' part, and it's happy that it's paying off in terms of some of these state and federal grants. Next. Next slide, please. The second effort, though, we are working on is a long-term study. And in 2017, Sandag finished up a conceptual engineering study of 5 potential alignments to move the corridor from this Del Mar Bluff area into a tunnel segment. And you see the 5 lines on the map. There's actually 2 greens, a little hard to see at this scale. And at the map, at the top of the map is north, and that's the Del Mar Fairgrounds. And then you can see how the 5 segments, which I'll go through a little bit more in detail in a couple of moments. So we're going to be building upon this study as we get started in the next phase of work. Next slide, please. There were some points, though, in that 2017 study that are worth mentioning. As I noted, each alignment would start at the north end at the San Diego Lagoon, come through the city of Del Mar, and then into the Los Penasquitos Lagoon, connecting back into Sereno Valley. About 5 miles is the study area for all of them, but not all of that 5 miles is tunnel, as we'll see in a second. But the underground sections do range to 1.5 to 2.5 miles. We have one kind of more shallow alternative, which is under Camino Del Mar through the city. That was proposed in the previous study as a cut and cover trench, but all others were proposed as a bored tunnels, very deep in some areas. Next slide. This is just a cross section to give you an example of a twin bore tunnel. When we would be making this improvement, we would definitely be adding that second track. That's a priority for us in the region, is adding that capacity so additional service can be run. So each of the tracks would be in its own bored tunnel. You can see it's the right and left. And then in the middle was proposed to be an emergency access tunnel. And so that's kind of how you could see the ground level up above and that sort of dashed line. So that's just one example to kind of give you an idea what we were talking about in the 2017 study. Next slide. So I'd like to run through each of the 5 just very quickly, and there's some common things here to look at in terms of the key. And it's, as I said, it's not all tunnel segment, but where you see an orange segment, that's an at grade, so it's at ground level segment. The yellow would be in a trench segment. The pink or the magenta color, that is the actual tunnel segment. And then the blue would be an elevated. So you can kind of give you an idea of how the concepts were laid out in that 2017 study. So the first one up is the Camino Del Mar alignment, and that is the slowest. It is below Highway 101 through the city, and that was built as a road corridor, not a rail corridor, so it is the slowest. It is also, though, designed to avoid going under any commercial buildings, any residences. So that was the benefit of this particular alignment. But it would have a significant disruption to traffic. There's a lot of utilities under this roadway that would need to be relocated. So as I go through these, I might mention, I'll just give you a couple pluses and minuses, and then we'll look at how all 5 compared at the end. So next slide. The first of 2 alignments along or underneath Crest Canyon. First was the higher speed alignment. This is the shortest overall alignment we have. Speeds at 90 miles an hour for passenger trains, very deep. But we would need to look at properties both at the north and the south end of the tunnel segment. So Sandag Lagoon to the north and near the Los Penasquitos Lagoon to the south. Next slide is an additional Crest Canyon alignment, a little bit longer than the previous alignment and slower at the north end. And that was made, that was conceptualized to minimize those properties, particularly at the north end of the portal. Next slide is one of 2 Interstate 5 tunnel alignments. This is the longest of the 5 alignments. And there would be some property needs, particularly at that north end. You can kind of see how the alignment would snake along the Sandag Lagoon to the south there. It is the slower alignment, it is the longest overall. And again, there would be significant properties needed. There would be some traffic disruptions and those sort of detriments. And the last slide, tunnel slide here is a little bit of a variation on that I-5 East tunnel, and that was, and it's a little bit slower, and it was meant to, address some of the property needs, particularly on that north end of the corridor. Next slide. So this table shows you, next slide, please. This table shows you just a comparison. First, in terms of cost, between $2.5 and $3.5 billion, and this is from in 2017 dollars. This is a couple of years old. You can see how the length, those I-5 tunnels being the longest, actually longer than the current segment of our low sand corridor. You can see the tunnel lengths. You can see some of the, the potential impacts to the lagoons, to Jimmy Durante Boulevard, which is one of the main thoroughfares in the city, and some of the traffic needs, and then how the travel time savings would compare between the 5 alternatives. So this was just a summary from our 2017 study. Next slide, please. We're about to embark on an update of the study. Next slide. And here's what we hope to accomplish there in the study is first to take a look in this specific area of those 5 tunnel alignments with the idea of doing additional technical analysis, additional conceptual engineering to narrow from 5 to some lesser number. And then we would do a lot of supporting analysis, not only in this corridor, but the entire 60-mile San Diego corridor. So outside these tunnel alignments, we'd be looking at other proposed improvements as all around the goal of reducing travel times, increasing our capacity so we can add additional service, and then enhancing safety. And I might mention that Caltrans just finished up a tunnel study just south of here along the Miramar Hill area. And if you've taken the train between Old Town and Sereno Valley, this is the slowest portion of the corridor when you're going around the hill. There's some very tight curves. And so Caltrans finished up that study, and we'll be looking at that study as well. But in the rest of the corridor, we'll be looking at a program of improvements that gets us those reduced travel times, additional capacity, and safety enhancements. And the last bullet there, at a planning level, we would like to see how this low sand corridor and these improvements would fit with future extensions that are called for in the state rail plan, for example, in the regional transportation plan to the U.S.-Mexico border, how it connects with future high-speed trains along the I-15 corridor. Next slide, please. So here's some specific tasks that we'll be looking at, and they kind of start from kind of high level and then drill down. But we want to be cognizant of those previous efforts, the state rail plan, other corridor planning studies that Sandag, NCTD, the Low Sand Agency have taken on. Don't want to reinvent the wheel there. We want to look at, first of all, is higher speed operationally feasible in the corridor? So that's one of our first bullets that we'll take on. And then we'll look at the alternatives analysis in this area, thinking about that map of 5 alternatives and how we can narrow that down. Look at those future connections. We do want to put together a phasing and implementation plan. We want to have cost estimates. We want to think about potential funding sources, phases, that sort of thing. And then throughout the entire study, we do have a public involvement and outreach phase. Next slide. So thinking about just the Del Mar and the Miramar Hill alternatives analysis, we have a lot of work to do. So that's what this slide is showing you, some updated information from the 2017 study and the Caltrans studies, but a lot of more technical information in terms of additional geotechnical work, noise and vibration right away. We'll have some visual simulations so folks can see what exactly these portal areas will look like, help visualize those in your head. And then we'll do an economic impact analysis specific to the Del Mar Bluff. Next slide. So we are using the $3 million that the board of directors, along with the other corridor plans and the other work last September approved, was approved for this particular study. We'll get started with those dollars. Hopefully today, I think, is the deadline for Caltrans to let us know about our pending planning grant. We'll help supplement our dollars that the board of directors provided. And then we do plan to start this month. We do expect to take about 18 months, but I did want to call out something that we wrote about in the next step section of the staff report, and that is where we talked about the San Diego Regional Rail Corridor Working Group. And that is a working group that was set up and is headed by California Transportation Secretary David Kim, really to draw attention to the Del Mar Bluff area on both of these fronts, to work in a coordinated effort to find funding to finish the stabilization efforts I mentioned earlier, but also to provide us with input on this longer-term realignment study. So that's made up of federal, state, and local officials are all working together. And so we see that not only reporting back to the Transportation Committee with updates as needed, going out to the public with public involvement activities, but also getting the input from that working group, kind of all moving together in one coordinated effort is going to be really key to our success. So I will stop here. I'm happy to take any comments or questions that you have.
Okay, any comments or questions from committee members? How about Mayor Edson?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Linda. And so speed, you talked about the tunnel options on slide 12, I think. That slide 12 may have been something different, but number 2 being highest speed at 90 miles per hour. However, it took property. Yeah, I think that's a correct slide. Thank you. And on tunnel option 3 appears to be a variation on tunnel option 2, but with less taking of property. What's the difference in the speed for those two different concepts?
Mayor, I don't have that in front of me. I know that the higher speed is at track speed as the LOSAN or NCTD criteria of 90 mile an hour for passenger trains. I believe the slower speed is not that much slower speed. I want to say it's maybe more like in the range of 70 mile an hour, but I can verify that.
Okay, thank you. And I realize that studies are
I'm
ongoing.
sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt. I do have a 60 mile an hour for passengers.
Okay, so 60 mile an hour versus 90 miles an hour between the choices of 2 and 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then I realize that studies are still ongoing, but with regard to the Miramar Hill Tunnel, and is there a Del Mar Tunnel alignment concept that staff, even without going into detailed studies, because I know those are coming, is there a tunnel concept that looks more attractive just with what you do know now for the two?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if one looks the most attractive right now. I do think that we'll have to look at all 5, but just some comments from the study we did in 2017 is those I-5 alignments being the longest. Any travel time savings we pick up in a tunnel, we use getting back into the alignment, into the existing alignments in the lagoon. So I just would throw that out as anecdotal, but I think we'll look at all 5 at this point.
Okay, just a comment. I think it's vitally important that the recommended long-term alternative maintain or better improve the operating speed of rail services along the NCTD Low-Sand corridor.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Sure. Thank you. Just to the comment, everything right now, when you do a study, everything is on the table. We're going to look at this and we're going to evaluate it, and we're going to come to the committee with evaluation criteria. Right now, we're not taking anything in or out or guessing on anything, but I do want to make a statement on this Los-An, the Bluff in general, and this Los-An corridor, and we made it one of the 5 agency priorities, and my colleague from NCTD, Matt Tucker, this happened because of great working relationship with Matt and his team. I think we are ready to submit, if we haven't already, a funding request. The good news of all of this is we are hoping, both Matt and I, that by the time we get news about the state funding, that the short term will be done, will be funding secured. The longer term, I think it's going to require us to look purely from a planning standpoint. What's the best alternative to achieve speed, capacity, and safety on that corridor? And that includes a lot of things. Unfortunately, just want to alert the members that $3 million is not going to dive into enough details for everything. Our hope was, and there were a bill run by Assemblymember Tasha Horner from North County to get us an additional $5 million, and that bill did not move this year. We hope it moves next year. But unfortunately, again, with the $3 million, we'll be able to have some ideas in some areas by Del Mar, the Miramar Tunnel, but we won't dive into all the detail for the whole corridor to achieve these 3 objectives.
Matt, did you want to weigh in?
Yes, sir. Just a couple of comments. I think first, just to go back to Board Member Edson, I think when we look at these different alignments, when we talk about speed, I would just steer everybody to focus in on a bigger question is the travel time from end to end. I know Linda and Hassan and Sandag are well aware of it. There could be incremental improvements in speed rating for a specific segment of the track, but the more focus is going to be reducing the end-to-end travel time. And in fact, if you looked at some of the study from the Miramar Tunnel, that identifies significant end-to-end travel time savings. That's just a comment. Secondarily, I would just say as we go through this analysis that's critical and important, and we are absolutely on board working closely with Sandag, I think it's important for our elected officials, keep in mind that as we look at the criteria that Hassan mentioned that we're going to need to develop, it's going to be well beyond just the cost to maintain. Tunnels have significant costs associated with maintenance. And one of the things as we go through that process, we're going to have to make sure we understand what those costs are. And the critical piece as we work through this is identifying the funding. I would say my orientation as the executive director would be to make sure that if we talk about a capital project, and I know Hassan would be thinking of this already, is that we have to identify the operating costs and maintenance money at the same time. Those tunnels are not inexpensive to maintain. It's just critical that we do it. The last piece is just as we look at these different alternatives, is just making sure that we focus in on, from an NCTD point of view, we can't have any alignment alternative that comes forward that obviously adds time to the schedule or mitigates the ability to move passenger or freight in the manner that we do today and we plan for in the future. I know all of those things are already being considered and incorporated by Sandag. I just thought it would be important for our elected officials to hear those thought processes.
And Chairman, just to add to what Matt said, it's the same thing with the rest of the regional transportation plan. All the costs that's going to be presented will be a total cost. It will include operation and maintenance and capital cost, not just capital, because like Matt said, there is significant cost in the plan. Very significant portion of the cost is maintaining what we're proposing to build. So it will be a full cycle cost of both capital and O&M. So, and I agree with what Matt said regarding that.
Mayor Edson, do you have something else you want to add?
Yes, I also wanted to agree with Matt that in travel time is of paramount importance for public transportation to attract choice riders. As we know, it must provide frequency, reliability, cost competitiveness, and in concert with that frequency, as Commissioner Bonelli mentioned during the last item, one that links corridors and offers multimodal options that quickly and easily move folks from where they live to where they work and play and otherwise need to go attend events, go to the hospital, whatever that happens to be. But it must be in a timely, cost competitive manner.
Okay, thank you. I had a question for you on this Del Mar, this is new to me, I guess, the Del Mar and Miramar Hill alternatives analysis. Is that an option 6 or is that part of these other options? I'm kind of confused with that slide, I think it's slide 15. What is that?
Yeah, that's just one of the tasks in the study. And the Del Mar, there's 2 pieces to that. Del Mar piece are the 5 lines that I showed you through the map. And then separately is the Miramar Hill piece, which is Caltrans just finished up looking at a couple of alternatives. So we'll look at both of those and look and address these points through the study. So we'll do additional analysis on each of those sections of the corridor.
Okay, but so it's not another alternative to the 5. And I guess since this study was done in 2017, and knowing what we know now and the stabilization of the bluffs, I guess, are you even going to be looking at others? Is there another potential or something else outside of these 5, or these? I guess you'll be looking to see if these 5 are still valid or not. I know there was Hassan had presented a alternative plan I thought was pretty good as far as, you know, the trenching along the bluffs, but apparently the Coastal Commission didn't like that and weighed in heavily against it. So I just want to make sure we're looking, you know, at all the alternatives we can. So those are just kind of comments. The other thing is I'm trying to figure out how we, the Transportation Committee, and I don't know if any other committee members have any comments on this, you know, where do we fit into this puzzle of all of this planning? I know ultimately that the board of directors is going to be of Sandag is going to be voting on yes or no once this in many years from now of how this you know, what the final alignment is and where the dollars are coming from, things like that. And the Transportation Committee, we give input and recommendations to the board. And I know there's this working group already that's outside. This is actually NCTD turf. So I want to make sure we at Transportation Committee are getting updates as necessary, and we have input to some of these. So I'm just trying to figure out where we fit in and make sure that we have those opportunities for input and updates. And I think I brought this up earlier to Mr. Lithicum, and he suggested we have quarterly updates and, you know, potential input. But there seems to be a lot of different working groups on here. I don't want to step on toes, but I want this committee to be informed enough to make good recommendations to the board when necessary.
Supervisor,
Sure.
Just briefly. So the working group that was created by the Secretary David Kim is going to obviously make some recommendations. Those recommendations will come to NCTD and Sandag, and eventually come to the Transportation Committee and go to the board from there. I'm not sure. I think the only entities that's going to be able to decide one way or another is NCTD and Sandag boards of how to move forward. I would say, just to go back a little bit, unfortunately, the timing of these things, I mean, this is going to take time, obviously, to be settled. But once we get some information from the study, we're going to start coming to the Transportation Committee and presenting it. And I'm sure Matt will do the same thing. At the end of the day, the Sandag board will make a decision, and we'll have to figure out how they're going to fund whatever improvement we're going to do. But the working group is actually a good place to, you know, bounce ideas, et cetera, et cetera.
And I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that the TC is, we don't get something delivered fake. It's kind of, we have input along the way. So that's my only comment. Any other committee members have any items on this? Is this I guess we're looking for
hey, Jim,
a motion.
Bill
Yes,
Sankey here. Hey, just a couple comments. The cut and cover disruption that we looked at through our 3rd and 4th Street corridors was so significant that the resident pushback on that particular option for our proposed tunnel was huge. And so running the thing under that's going to be a difficult one. Del Mar's sensitive as it is, that would be a tough one. And of course, the utility issues up and down that hill are probably significant too. Matt Tucker nailed it when he commented about the speed that really matters is the end-to-end speed. About a year ago, there was a op-ed in the UT, and it talked about efforts to change the rail ride time. And 30 years ago, it was an hour and 45 minutes, and now it's 2 hours and 10 minutes or something. We haven't even improved it. It's actually gotten worse. And so the Miramar Tunnel is probably a bigger bang for reducing the travel time than this Bluff realignment, because any of the options were 3 or 6 minute differences, really. And so I think the bigger lift is getting the whole route to move quicker and more efficiently. I'm curious, and Linda, maybe you could touch on this. I'm struck by the amount to maintain a tunnel. And so my initial thought was, we'll just go underground with the whole thing. But the elevated portions, the at-grade portions, and then some of it tunneled starts to make a little bit more sense when you can save some maintenance money. We've got a lot of experience building these overhead things that with the trolley line we're working on. I'm curious, Jim, you mentioned the Coastal Commission. I'm not sure how much they would like an elevated train track through the lagoon just south of the Del Mar Fairgrounds. And so I'd urge us to be reflective of Coastal Commission concerns as we move forward. And finally, again, just a comment, the Sorrento Valley connection between the trolley system and the low sand corridor has been identified as a problem. With that being such a center for employment, I would hope that we would optimize whatever we did at the south end of this tunnel to make the Sorrento Valley commuter receive some real benefits to the functioning of that line. And those are my comments. And I guess my only question in there, Linda, is about that elevated portion versus the tunnel portion, and how you guys have, at least at a very preliminary stage, started to look at that.
And before Mr. Chairman, just Councilmember Sankey, just a comment on in your comment, and that is the Miramar is more critical, obviously for speed than the Del Mar Bluff. Look, we said speed, safety, and capacity. The Del Mar Bluff has to be dealt with, because otherwise every so often you're going to have to come and says we need to stabilize the bluff. I mean, this whole study is said, let us fix this corridor once and for all. And I know politically it's going to be a difficult thing regardless what you propose, but I don't think one could conclude that, well, let us improve the speed with Miramar Tunnel and forget about the bluff. We're temporarily stabilizing the bluff, but that's not the kind of solution you want a region to hang on later. Just a comment on what you just said, sir.
Yeah, Hassan, let me follow that remark up. I didn't prefer one or the other. At a meeting several months ago, I talked about, why we even needed to do Del Mar 6 when we were ready to do this big project. And frankly, we have to do 6 because we're not going to get to the big project for another decade at the very, very minimum. So I understand the importance of the corridor, absolutely, and believe fiercely and understand more clearly that we're going to need to spend $100 million before we get to spend $3 billion to do the big fix.
Right.
Thank you.
$3 billion in the low end, sir.
Yes, I'm aware.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion or comments on this item? That's good discussion. Linda, thank you so much. A great presentation. Oh, Tessa, I'm supposed to ask. Okay, we have any public comment on this item?
Thank you, Chair. There are no public comments on item 7.
Okay, and so is there well, this is discussion or possible action. Do we need to accept this or just accept the report, or do we have to have a motion on this?
It's a report. It's on the agenda, is listed possible action, but it's informational report. It's up to you, Chairman.
If there's no real motion, I think, thank you for the information. This was good. I think it's a good discussion, and it's a very big concern for, I think, our entire region. All over, we realize the importance of this. So thank you, Linda, and thank you, Hassan, for the report. Okay, moving on to item 8. This is a continued public comments. Tessa, do we have any non-agenda comments?
No, sir, there are no non-agenda public continued comments.
And okay, any member comments? No? Okay. Well, our next meeting is going to be 2 weeks on June 19th at 9 a.m. Thank you, everyone, for participating. It was a good meeting, great information, and glad we got some stuff done. So thank you very much. Thanks for your participation. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.